And now that we know and understand how to work with masks, I suggest you put this knowledge into practice. Let's see how it works with different photos in different situations. And this will be the third stage of processing. It's called detailed color correction. Here you will learn how to change a separate piece of the photo. For example, in this case, we will work with the color of the lips and not with the color of the entire photo. And let's see how it works. Click on this circle and we see different panels that will allow us to work with color. But we don't need all the panels. We only need solid color, curves, hue saturation and selective color. And that's it. Thanks to this panel, we can get any color correction we want. This works at the stages of detailed and final color correction. Now you and I will need a solid color panel. To begin with, we can choose any shade of the color we need here. In this case, a shade of red. Later, this shade can be adjusted. Next, click OK, and we see that automatically this new layer has a mask. We can now work with it and choose in which area of the frame this red color will be visible. But we also see that now this red color is homogeneous and without texture. It does not suit us. If we do an inversion of the mask and start drawing the lips, it will look completely unnatural. And in order for the result to be suitable, we need to switch this layer to the soft light mode. In this case, when we choose soft light, we now see the texture and we need it. But it does not suit us that this color is on the entire photo area. Therefore, we need to work with the mask. We highlight the mask, do the inversion by pressing Command-I on Mac or Ctrl-I on Windows. When the mask is black, we don't see the changes in the photo. As you can see, the layer is on, but there is no red color. When the layer is turned off, we also do not see it. Now we take a 100% white brush and start painting this red color in the soft light overlay mode on the lips. I do this without using the selection tools. I'm so comfortable because I use a graphic tablet. But if you suddenly went over the edge, you can always take a black brush and erase the excess. You can use the selection tools, but I work here without them. Note that when the brush has 0% stiffness and you choose a large brush size, the lines will have more fuzzy edges. And when you choose a small brush size, the lines will have clearer edges. So when you need a clear edge, you don't need to add rigidity, you just need to control the size. And this way you can draw all the details very carefully. If you made a mistake and need to get it back, you can just press Command-Z or Ctrl-Z on Windows. So the lips are painted and now they look very bright, but this is not the result that we need, because the lips now look artificial, as if they live a separate life. How to make them look natural, but still bright? We can simply reduce the opacity to a value at which the result will suit us. Then we can choose the right shade, and that's how it looks much better. Let's compare how the photo looks before and after. And this is how the mask helps us at the stage of detailed color correction to work with a separate fragment of a photo. And in this example, we made the lips more saturated and juicy. What I have just shown you, I call the coloring method, and the scope of this method is very wide. In this photo, I will show you how you can draw the details of makeup and make it more expressive. So to begin with, we again select the solid color panel and work with the skin tone. I choose a random shade of beige, select the soft light overlay mode, and do the inversion of the mask, press Command-I or Ctrl-I. And now we take a white brush. I'm already speeding up here. This is a familiar process for you. And most likely you have already guessed what we are going to do now. We just dye the skin color, and yes, you can paint not only the skin of the face but also the skin of the whole body. After we have colored the skin tone, we can often see that more work needs to be done on the shade, and we can go back to the solid color panel and adjust it. Usually our task is to make the skin tone a little more saturated, fresh, healthy, and less gray. I don't recommend changing the skin tone much, let it be close to natural. Don't try to draw a strong unnatural tan, and don't make the shade too orange. Let's leave this shade for now, and while the layers are not connected, we can return to this layer at any time and make changes. Next, click on this circle and select the solid color panel, but now we will work with the lip color. I choose a random light pink shade and then set the soft light mode and invert the mask again. We can make many layers, and each of them will be responsible for its own area in the photo. In this case, we are working with lips on this layer. We have a black mask. We take a 100% white brush and draw the lips. I remind you that if you go over the edge, you can take a black brush and erase the excess. Now I decrease the opacity volume and choose the desired final shade. Now the shade is white and I want to make it more orange. Here our task is just to emphasize the color of the lips and make them more lush and expressive. I don't recommend radically changing the color, it always doesn't look natural. Next, we create a new layer with a solid color panel, select a random red shade, software light mode, and do an inversion of the mask. Take a white brush and let's work on its transparency, opacity 15%, flow 25%, and let's work on blush. The makeup artist applied blush quite intensively, and in real life they were clearly visible, but it's not noticeable in the photo. So let's make them more pink. So again, we took a transparent brush and lightly draw a pink shade on the cheeks. We look before, after, adjust the opacity value, we can adjust the final shade, and that's how I propose to leave it. As you already understand, it's possible to paint not only the skin and the details of the makeup. You can apply this method to any areas in the photo. For example, here we can paint a jacket. We take a new solid color layer, select the soft light overlay mode, take a white opacity brush and flow 100%, and we paint over the jacket. After that, we can work on the final shade, and so the jacket became more blue and bright. Now we can select all the layers by holding down the Shift key. Click on the first and the last layer, and then click on the button in the form of a folder, and all the layers are combined into a group. Now we can see how the photo has changed after all the work done. As you can see, the photo has become less gray and more colored and voluminous. And now we are ready to move on to the next photo. Using the example of this photo, I will show you what to do if gray spots remain on the skin after retouching. For example, when working with the dodge and burn method, I removed the hard shadow at the nose, and now we see a faded spot here. What are we going to do with him? It's very simple. Create an empty layer by clicking on plus. It doesn't change the photo in any way. We need it for subsequent work with a certain area in the photo. Now we take a pipette and select the area of skin closest to this faded spot. Next, we take a transparent brush, opacity 15%, flow 25%, and we just paint over this spot. I do a few neat strokes like an artist. Here the skin is slightly darker, so we can take a new shade with a pipette. And after that, we need to choose the color mode. And now our gray spot no longer exists. I recommend that you check the photo after retouching, and if you find such faded spots, color them immediately using this method. And only then proceed to other methods of detailed color correction, for example, skin coloring and makeup details. To consolidate your knowledge about this method, I suggest you practice additionally in this photo. There are small gray spots near the eyes as well as small redness. They don't look bad, but I can show you how to remove them if you need it. So to work with gray spots, we create an empty layer, then use a pipette to take the desired color, select a transparent brush and paint over these spots. Setting the color overlay mode, and now there are no more gray spots. If necessary, we can lower the opacity volume. Next, we will work with the red spots. To do this, we use the same method. Create an empty layer and use a pipette to select a shade next to this red spot. Then, take a transparent brush and paint over the red spot. We set the color mode and notice that the red spot has disappeared, and move on to the next photo. In working with this photo, we will consider a slightly more complex method for detailed color correction. Here we will use new panels that have not been used before. Here our task is to work with a piece of the frame where the hair is dyed. It doesn't suit us that the hair is dyed with blue paint, and we will change this color. First, we need to bleach this blue hair. Let's do it. Click on the circle and select the Hue Saturation panel. Here I will work with a blue shade, and I reduce its saturation. And now we see that the blue color has become colorless throughout the photo. It does not suit us. Therefore, we do the inversion of the mask, and now with a 100% white brush, we draw this effect in the desired. Please note that when we run a brush through the hair of a different color, it does not change, because we removed the saturation only from the blue color. That's why I did not use the black and white panel. We look at the result and see that the hair is no longer blue, but they are also not colored enough. We can change that. To do this, I will use the curves panel, and here we choose the colors red, green and blue, and turn and work with each of them. Choose the red color and take this tool. My wish for the result is that I want to make my hair more red. In fact, in life, the model really has red hair, but in the photo, it is not so noticeable. The same red color will go well with blue, and so I run my finger over the faded part where the blue color wasn't look for a suitable shade using all the colors of the curves panel, and now it's a suitable red shade that I want to work with. As you can see, this red tint is present in the whole photo. It does not suit us, so we will work with a mask. We select it and do an inversion. We take the transparent brush, opacity 15%, flow 25%, and draw a red shadow only on those curls that were blue. We touch them up, and we can see how the result changes. We look before and after, we see that the faded curls have become more saturated, and move on to the next step. Let's make all the hair redder now. To do this, you can make a new curves layer and research for the desired shade, but we don't need to waste time on this. Let's just copy this layer with the existing settings. I press Command C and Command V, and now we have a new curves layer with the color already configured. But the mask is also copied, and we see this red shade somewhere on the body. I will paint it completely black to remove it. Now the mask is completely black and we don't see any changes. We take a 100% white brush and draw the hair. After that, we can adjust the shade as well as reduce opacity. And we can make final adjustments to achieve curve to achieve the desired shade. We can combine all the layers into a group and look at the photos before and after. We removed the blue shade and dyed our hair a redder shade. The next photo, here we can work with the red spot and the blue one. To do this, we will use curves. Create a new curves layer and work with each color in turn. Here our task is to make sure that the red spot becomes flesh colored like skin. And choosing a shade, we strive for this. Don't immediately pick up the perfect shade, let it just be similar. Now we are doing an inversion, we don't see any changes. We take a white brush, opacity 15%, flow 25%. We work with a brush in the spot area, paint it over with light movements. We see that it has changed and no longer looks red. We are going back to the color curves and can finally correct them. But here I see that the shade is already okay and the spot is just dark, and here we can work with a black and white curve and just lighten this spot. We can also return to the color curves if necessary, and we'll look at the result. We removed the red spot and the texture was not affected. If we removed it with the patch, we would get a very poor quality and dirty result, while the model would lose the natural folds and eyelashes for her face. Therefore, you should not do this. With such spots, you can only fight with the help of color curves of coloring. And let's work with gray spots. We can use colored curves or color this area through an empty layer, but I want to show you another way. We take a solid color layer, soft light overlay mode, do an inversion, take a white transparent brush and paint over the gray areas. In contrast to the coloring method on a blank layer, in this case, we can adjust the shade. That is, we can go back to the solid color panel and adjust the shade more precisely. And look at the before and after. I call it the concealer effect. In the following example, we see that after retouching, a blue spot remained on the cheek, and it clearly stands out. We will now work with him using colored curves to consolidate knowledge about this method. Create a new curves layer and work with the colors, choosing the right shade. We need to make this spot more red to match the color of blush. Next, we invert the mask and take a white transparent brush. And now, with light repetitive movements, we paint over the blue spot. Then we can finally work with the color curves, choosing the right shade. And we'll look at the photos before and after. And after we have color aligned this area, we can work further, color the skin tone, and make up details, draw the volume. Using this photo as an example, we'll study even more complex methods. Here our task is to work with the earring. We need to make it more shiny and expressive. To begin with, I suggest working with the white part of the earring. I want to change its shade as it looks yellowish now, although in real life it is white pearls. Before I dye the pearls, I will discolor them so that the extra yellow shade does not prevent us from reaching the desired shade. To do this, I create a black and white layer. Now the photo looks discolored. As you already understand, this effect does not suit us in the whole photo, so we invert the mask and swipe with the white 100% brush only on pearls. And we see that now the pearls have turned gray. I adjust the edges with the black brush in the right places. And now that the pearls are discolored, I suggest painting them in the desired shade. We create a solid color layer and I choose a light warm shade because the photo has a warm light and all the photos are in beige brown and golden shades. If the pearl is cold, then it will live separately from the whole photo and look unnatural. Blending mode, soft light. And now, in order not to redraw this pearl on the mask, we simply create clip and mask. Thus, the earring is dyed. We can go back to the solid color panel and choose any color, but I still do not recommend choosing any radically different color here, so I will leave it as a natural shade for pearls. Next, we can additionally create a curves layer and using a black and white curve, work with the brightness of pearls. And so that these changes are visible only on the pearls, we again select the Create Clip and Mask function and we see how the pearls become brighter and more noticeable. Too much. So I will lower the opacity volume. Next, we can combine all these layers into a group and look at the before and after photos. If it seems to us that the pearls stand out too much, we can reduce the opacity volume of the whole group. We can also work with the gold part of the earring and for this let's work with curves. With the help of a curve I make the gold color lighter and shinier. Then I make an inversion and draw the effect of the curve with the 100% white brush only on a gold frame. Now we see that the frame has become lighter, brighter, shinier and more expressive. But I don't like its shade, let's work with it too and use colored curves. I take turns with 3 colored curves and look for that golden shade that will look harmonious. And then I lower the opacity volume, see how it looks before and after. We can add this layer to the group and again we look at how the earring has changed after processing. Using this photo as an example, I will show you how to calculate unnecessary shades and remove them. To do this, create a hue saturation layer. The photo may contain shades that are invisible to the eye, which affect the color. We cannot see them, but we need to remove them for color purity. For example, in this photo, there is blue in the white color of the background and linen. I found out this when I set the color blue to 100% saturation. And we don't need this blue color. It's not natural because in life underwear and background are white. We check other colors and see that there is also a pink color on the background and we don't need it at all and we can remove it. And then the background will become a purer gray color. Next, check the blue shades and we see that they are not in the wrong places, only on trousers, but they also had this shade in life. Next, we check the green shades and we also do not see them. Further, yellow. We see that yellow is present in the skin. This is okay, because there will always be a mixture of orange, red and yellow in the skin. We check the red color, we see that it is on the skin and this is normal. Also, there is a little red color on the background and by the mask from the background we can remove it. Let's learn how to do this by working with the color blue. It is present on the underwear and it does not suit us. We choose the blue color and reduce its saturation. We don't need the trousers to turn gray either. Our task is to make the panties white. Therefore, we choose a mask and make an inversion. Then, for a change, we can work with the selection tools. Next, I use a 100% white brush and paint over this area. Click on the space outside the selection and the selection disappears. Now I can work with the edges where there are unpainted areas. Let's compare the result before and after. Now it looks much better. In this way, we can work with the other shades. For example, remove blue, pink, and red from the background. In addition, we can control the shades of individual colors. Let's change the shade of red on the background. If I just choose red and change its shade, then the photo will also change the shade of skin, hair, and clothes because there is a red color here and it does not suit us. So first, let's select the background and only then create a new hue saturation layer. I am using the quick selection tool and I will work on the precision of the edges later. I also want to say that when I show you how to change the background color, draw blush or change the shade of jeans, this does not mean that these methods are suitable only for these tasks. For example, the method in which we draw blush can be useful when drawing shadows on the eyelids. Remember, in Photoshop, one method can always have many applications. I have highlighted the background and now let's work on the edges in the hair area. As you can see, there are no clear lines here. For a more detailed selection of this area, we go to the Select and Mask panel. Here it is even more noticeable how unevenly the edges are highlighted. Take this brush. Next, check that all the settings are like mine, and we run the brush along the edges and notice how they become softer. And after that, click OK. And now we create a hue saturation panel, select the red color, change its shade, and it changes exclusively in the background. See what the mask of this layer looks like. It was created automatically and the black color indicates the area where the color does not change. Then we can continue to work with the background color using this mask. Now I will show you what it will look like. For example, we can create a solid color layer and paint this background in soft light blending mode and click create clip and mask to apply this effect only to the background area. And now we can see that the background becomes cleaner and more saturated. Please note that everything is fine with the hair. They remain unchanged and we do not see sharp and natural edges. Then we can continue to work with colored curves and continue to change the shade of this background. Again, click Create Clip and Mask so that the changes on the curves layer are visible only the background. We can return to any panel and continue to finalize the desired shade. That is, you can manage each of these layers until they are flattened. You can also go back to the mask and try to change it. For example, select an additional area where all changes will be visible. This is suitable for you in case you notice unevenly painted edges and want to work with them. You will be able to do this by working with the mask. You can also create another layer hue saturation and add saturation, and don't forget to create clip and mask. And we can see that the background is more saturated. You have many options for color correction here. Experiment, practice, choose which option you like best. Now let's see how you can work with the color of the whites of the eyes. Then principle of operation will be similar to how we worked with the pearl earring. We create a black and white layer and immediately invert the mask. And now we draw a black and white effect only the area of the whites of the eyes using a black mask with the 100% white brush. We have discolored this area. Next, create a solid color panel and select a random shade in the soft light blending mode and click Create Clip and Mask. Now the proteins look unnatural. Let's fix it. I adjust the hue of the solid color layer and control the opacity volume. Our task is to find a natural shade without unnecessary additional colors. Now let's combine the layers into a group and see what the before and after photos look like. And now we see that we managed to do it. Rarely, but sometimes you can add brightness by working with curves. To do this, we create a layer of curves, move the curve slightly up and click Create Clip and Mask. The changes in each layer are minor, but thanks to them, the whites of the eyes have become cleaner. You already know the staining method, and let's use this method here and paint the pupil of the eye. But first, notice that there is not one color here, but several. Therefore, we will create a couple of layers with different colors. Create the first layer of solid color and choose the orange color. Here I no longer repeat to you all the details of this method because it is already familiar too. I draw orange in one part of the pupil. Next, I create another layer with the blue color and draw it in another part of the pupil. I finally adjust the shade. In this case of pupils, by the way, we can use the overlay blending mode and it will give a more brilliant effect. Now we control the opacity value of these layers. We can also take a black brush and partially remove the orange and blue color. And now the eye looks completely different, despite the fact that the changes are completely insignificant. And what we'll do if we need to work with the shade of the teeth? That is to make them whiter, but at the same time one of our teeth stands out very much in color. Here I will not talk about retouching these teeth and how we can change their shape. Here we will talk specifically about color. To work with color, first create a black and white layer. We make an inversion of the mask. Take a white 100% brush and draw a black and white effect only on the teeth. And now we see that the teeth have become colorless, but this tooth no longer stands out due to color. Now it differs only in brightness. It is slightly darker than the rest of the teeth, and later we can just brighten it up, but now I would like to work on the shade of all the teeth. To do this, create a solid color layer, soft light blending mode, and click Create Clip and Mask. We select the desired shade. Additionally, we can create a curves layer and work with the colored curves. You can immediately click Create Clip and Mask and I choose a shade that will harmoniously match the skin color. How I can combine all the layers into a group? Look at the result and compare the before and after options. I think here you can add some more shade through the solid color panel to make the teeth look more natural. So the result is already good, and finally let's work on this tooth. It still stands out due to its brightness. We create a curves layer, take the finger tool, and we highlight the tooth area. Next, we make an inversion of the mask and draw these changes only in the tooth area with the 100% white brush. Now this tooth no longer stands out and in general the teeth are whiter. Using this photo as an example, I will show you how you can radically change the color, not just the shade. Let's work with the color of the skirt. In real life it was light pink, but in the photo the color looks rather dull and looks boring in the frame. For work, let's take the selection tool and use it to highlight the skirt. It's okay if you cannot immediately select the object evenly. Later you can work with the mask and paint the edges more clearly. The selection tool usually works well if the selected object is in contrast with the background. For example, in this area, the skirt is easy to distinguish because it's well separated from the background due to its color. But at the same time, the color of the skirt almost merges with the color of the skin, and in this area, the tool may not work accurately enough. Therefore, we will need to pay special attention to such areas. After we have selected the object, we create a solid color layer and select a pink tint. For you, this stage is already familiar. And you probably remember that next we select the soft light blending mode, and then we can finally choose the right shade, and now the skirt has become light pink and looks absolutely natural. But what are we going to do if we want a different color altogether? We can discolor it and then paint it, as it was when working with pearls. But the real color of this skirt is quite dull, so we can try to drastically change its color right away. For example, we can make it yellow or purple. I will focus on the color blue. At the same time, it looks lilac. It's okay, because the blue color is mixed with the color of the skirt. Now let's work with the mask of this layer and adjust the edges. I selected the mask and use a white brush to 100% paint over the edges that I missed. Such parts cannot be created automatically, so we will have to accept that sometimes it's worth working manually. Now create a curves layer and use a black and white curve to control the density, contrast and brightness of that color. Click Create Clip and Mask and look at the changes. We can continue to adjust the curve and notice how the color becomes more saturated and bright. We can also use color curves and make the color bluer. As you can see, we can use both the solid color and curves panel here. For example, we used the solid color panel to create a new color and using curves to give it the desired shade. You can use these methods for a wide variety of photos. It doesn't matter if it's clothes or other items. Next, we will look at a few examples of photos where the skin has an uneven tone. For example, here the arm is darker than the leg. The shade seems to be the same, but the brightness is different. In such cases, we simply create a layer of curves, take a finger and lighten the arm area. We make an inversion of the mask, take a 100% white brush and paint over the dark area. And now the hand has become light and no longer differs in brightness from the leg. Now we can see that the arm is slightly more yellow than the legs. To change the hue of the hand, let's create a hue saturation layer. Choose yellow. We can check and see that there is a lot of yellow here. We can control the tone of yellow and make it greener or red. I will make it redder because on the legs it's yellow just with a more red tone. Plus I removed the saturation of the yellow color a little and ready. We make an inversion and draw these changes with a white 100% brush in the arm area. Now we can see that the yellow color in the arm area has become less saturated and green. Combine these layers into a group and look at the result before and after. Before treatment, the hand differed in tone from the legs, and now both the arm and legs have the same tone. And what to do if we have such a photo and there is a gray spot on the chest? Let's work with it and make the skin tone even. Create an empty layer, use a pipette to take a suitable shade from the nearest colored part of the breast. We take a white transparent brush and paint this gray area. Now create a mask to erase the excess beige color from the clothes. We need to make a selection and for this I will stand on the base layer so the selection tool will work as accurately as possible. We select the top and with a 100% black brush I return this top to its original appearance. And of course, the final touch, select the color blending mode. Now we see that there is no gray spot, but I would like to darken this area because it stands out due to its brightness and because of this, the skin tone still doesn't look uniform. I have highlighted the breast area and now I'm creating a curves layer, slightly darkening the light part of the breast. Yes, the neck also becomes dark. It doesn't suit us, so we take a black transparent brush. Even a 100% brush will suit us. Thus, we left the darkening only in the area of the light spot on the chest, and now the skin tone has become more even. As you can see, it is not difficult at all and fast enough. If you cannot work fast yet, it's okay, you are learning and that's fine. The more you practice, the faster you will get used to all the methods and tools. The next common problem is red hands. To fix this problem, we can work with the hue saturation panel, but you are already familiar with it, so I suggest you get acquainted with another method. Create a duplicate layer and go to Camera Raw. Here on the color mixer panel there are 3 colors that are responsible for the color of the skin, and we can work with their saturation, brightness and tone. Since the hands are red, I make the red color more orange, and so that the orange is not so dark and saturated. I reduce its saturation and press OK. Now these changes are visible on the whole body. We don't need it, so we create a mask, do an inversion, take a white 100% brush and draw these changes only on the hand. That's it. The hands are no longer red. Next photo, and here you will practice drawing the details of the makeup before your eyes. On the shoot, the makeup artist used green eyeshadow, but green doesn't look as bright as in life. We will use the coloring method, but this time we will not have clear edges and we will use a transparent brush. In past examples, we often acted differently. We can immediately select the brush tool and reduce the opacity and flow. The principle of operation will be similar to the moment when you worked with blush. Imagine that you are an artist and you are a kind of drawing, making a few strokes. And let's get started. Create a solid color layer, select a random green tint, set the blending mode to soft light, switch to a mask, do an inversion and take a white transparent brush. We make repeated light strokes in the eyelid area and we see that the green color becomes more saturated and juicy. Don't worry if you go beyond the boundaries, you can take a 100% black brush and erase the extra moments. So now you can see that the color of the eyeshadows on the eyelids has become more attractive and expressive. And we go back to the solid color panel to pick up the final shade. As you can see, that shade can be completely different, more saturated or less. The shade that you choose should look harmonious with all other parts of the frame. That is why I insist that you study color theory and rely on this knowledge when color grading. In this photo, there is a gap in the makeup. The shadows on the left eye are not well shaded. To fix it, we could use cleaning tools, but in this case, the result is not very high quality. And I will show you how to make this area look so natural, as if no one worked with it in Photoshop. And we will use the dyeing method again. We create a solid color layer, select a random pink color, a soft light blending mode. Then we invert the mask and now we just fill in these gaps. 100% brush is not suitable, so we reduce the volume of opacity and flow, and we start drawing. As you can see, the spot has become pink, but at the same time it stands out due to its brightness. We will be able to deal with this easily with the dot and burn retouching method. Create a curves layer and create a darkening in the area of the bright spot. We make an inversion of the mask and paint over this bright spot with a white transparent brush. Notice how I work with the brush. I don't click on the brush and don't draw it in a solid line as happens when children decorate something in a coloring book. I do several strokes in the same place. And now the stain has become invisible and the shadows look shaded. Let's take a look at the before and after result. It looks great, and we can move on. Next, let's work with arrows before our eyes. I will show you how we can make them clearer and more expressive. In the lesson on retouching, I showed you how the arrows become more even when working with the cleaning tools. But after that, the lines of the arrows are still not bright and black enough. We will fix it now. Create an empty layer. Next, take a black brush, opacity 16, flow 24, and draw these arrows. Our task is to make the edges of the arrows clear. Note that I don't use such a large brush, because the larger the brush, the less sharp its edges. I use a very small brush, and thanks to this I managed to make the edge of the arrow clear. Now the arrows look black, but unnatural. We will not leave it like that. Select the overlay blending mode and slightly reduce the opacity to such a value at which the arrows will look natural. And now we can look at the final result. The arrows have become blacker and the look is more expressive. Now let's see how you can draw highlights and make them brighter. You already know what to do. To begin with, we will discolor them. Then paint and make it a little brighter. Let's practice together. Create a black and white layer, invert the mask, take a 100% white brush, and draw a black and white effect only in the area of the beads. Done. Now we can start coloring. Create a solid color layer. I want to pick up some more light pink shade, and the blending mode is soft light. And click Create Clip and Mask so that the coloring is visible only where the black and white effect was previously drawn. Now let's work on naturalness. I changed the shade a little, and as you can see, the beads can be very different. But most importantly, they will no longer be as colorless and inconspicuous as in the beginning. Next, we can create a curves layer and continue to control the brightness of these beads, but always keep it natural. These beads should look like they do in life. For example, I think these settings are absolutely harmonious and everything looks great. And now about the highlights. Create an empty layer, and here the principle of operation will be the same as when working with black arrows, but the brush will not be black, but white. There is an interesting point here. We can work not only with an ordinary brush as we are used to. We can also use this brush and make it more rigid. It is suitable for clear small highlights, for example, as on the nose. To work, set the opacity 15% and flow 25% and paint with the brush where there are these clear little highlights. For large highlights with fuzzy edges, we can use the softest brush possible. The main thing is not to draw a glare where there is none. You only need to work with a brush where this highlights and to preserve the anatomy of the face. Next, select the overlay blending mode and can reduce the opacity volume. I think the flare looks too bright on the nose, so I create a mask and use a black brush with about the same settings, slightly erase the excess. We are done, and now we can look at the result before and after. And let's consolidate this knowledge and work with the glare in this photo. We create a blank layer, we take a white brush, opacity 15%, flow 25%. Now our brush is soft, so we can work with large fuzzy highlights. I make a few light strokes over the highlights. Next, we can take a stiffer brush with sharp edges and draw small highlights with sharp edges. We look at the result before and after. We can slightly reduce the opacity volume, and now we see how minor changes have made the picture a little more voluminous. Next, let's talk about volume. For the first method, we need a new channel mixer layer, and here we immediately check the monochrome box, then select the soft light blending mode. I immediately lower the opacity volume and as you can see, the picture has become more voluminous. I don't recommend leaving it that way, therefore we use a mask. We make an inversion of the mask and draw this volume with a white transparent brush with light movements. I brush several times in the same places. Thanks to this method, we not only get volume, but also the skin becomes more textured. And that's what it looks like. We'll look before and after. The skin has become more shiny, the texture is more noticeable, and the picture itself is more voluminous. Sometimes you may encounter such a problem that the photo does not look voluminous at all due to poor light in the shooting. For example, here the light is completely flat, and we can draw highlights or use a channel mixer. But this in this case will not be enough. In addition, these methods work well only if you already have volume and glare in the photo, so additionally we can use curves. Create a layer of curves, take the finger tool, and select the protruding part of the face on which there could be light. These are usually the cheekbones, the center of the forehead, nose, chin. Lighten these parts slightly. We make an inversion of the mask, take a white transparent brush and draw this light in those areas where it could be. These are just the protruding parts of the face. Don't forget to work with your body as well. And now you can see how the picture has become more voluminous and the light is no longer so flat. Then we can take another curve and work with the dark curve. Here I'm already working with the non-protruding parts of the face and body. Now let's combine the layers into a group and when comparing, we see a fairly pronounced volume. I lower the opacity volume a bit and now the volume looks completely natural. You can draw such a volume not only on the face but also on the body, and not only on the body but everywhere you need it. It can be absolutely any photos, landscapes, objects, it doesn't matter. If you have a task to make some elements lighter, some darker, and thereby create volume, you can use this method. As well as a method with the channel mixer and a method for drawing highlights, I insist that you achieve volume in different ways and not just move the curve in some way. It's pretty stupid and a good volume won't work that way. Learn to see the light parts in the photo and make them more expressive. Now let's draw the volume on the body using curves. I created a layer with a light curve. Take a white transparent brush, and I'm less detailed about each step because you already know how it works. Now it's important for me to just show you how this method will work with the body. I run the brush over the highlights. This is the result we got. Next I create another curves layer, but this time for darkening. We make an inversion of the mask, take a white transparent brush, and work with dark areas. Let's combine the layer into a group, look at the result before and after, and we can slightly reduce the opacity volume.